Welcome to Heartglow CEO, where high-performing leaders learn to regulate stress, strengthen self-trust, and make clear decisions without sacrificing their health or values. I'm Casey Rossi, Integrative Leadership Coach. Expect practical nervous system tools, conscious leadership insights, and real conversations that bring achievement into alignment. Take a deep breath with me, and let's dive in. In the last episode, we dove deep into trust. We looked at what happens when trust gets bruised, what starts to show up when your nervous system is guarding against betrayal or possible breaches, and why leadership can feel so heavy when trust is strained beneath the surface. Brew yourself a cup of tea and sink into this one because it's a little bit longer than usual, but today I want to turn the lens inward. Because if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. All great leadership begins with self-leadership. And self-leadership requires self-trust. Not the fluffy, just believe in yourself version. I'm talking about the kind of self-trust you can actually lean on. When a conversation feels uncomfortable, when a decision feels hard, when your body is giving you a signal, or when everyone around you has an opinion about what you should do next. What comes to mind for me often is a stable oak tree. Strong, rooted, able to withstand the weather. The oak doesn't control the storm. It doesn't get to negotiate with the wind, the rain, the temperature, or the season. Its power comes through the depth of its roots. That feels like leadership right now, because the external weather is always changing. Clients have expectations, teams have a lot of moods, the market shifts, relationships stretch. Algorithms do whatever algorithms do. Organizations restructure, and life just brings the unexpected. And then there's all the content that we're getting bombarded with. There's so much leadership language online right now that sounds nearly identical. Polished phrases, big declarations, AI slicked inspiration that somehow says a lot and not much at all. I'll be honest, I recently saw a colleague use language that felt almost identical to something I had been working on, and I felt a little mortified. Not in a competitive way, more like, oh no, we are all going to sound like the same soup. That moment really landed for me because I don't want to lead through regurgitated language. I don't want to coach from whatever phrase is trending. And I certainly don't want to add more leadership mumbo-jumbo to the pile. What I really care about is speaking from lived truth, from embodiment, from earned wisdom, from the kind of knowing that has been tested in real life. And honestly, that is a huge part of self-trust. It's the ability to stay connected to your own truth, even when the outside world is kind of crazy, pushy, impressive, urgent, and full of opinions. Think about how many times you've had a little internal nudge and did something else. Maybe the other option was easier or faster. Maybe you had the case of I shoulds. You know the ones. I should say yes. I should be grateful. I should be more flexible. I should be able to handle this. I shouldn't be making such a big deal out of this. And then later, you get that unmistakable feeling, oh man, I should have listened to myself. This happens in relationships, work decisions, hiring, partnerships. The list goes on and on. Happens in pricing, boundaries, timing, communication. If you have any kind of self-awareness practice, you know the feeling all too well. Your instincts were speaking, but an old pattern stepped in and overrode them. Maybe you wanted to meet expectations. Maybe you didn't want to disappoint someone. Maybe you were afraid of being judged or misunderstood or seen as negative or difficult. Or you were trying to stay inside your inked role, the reliable one, the easygoing one, The strong one, the helper, the fixer, the one who can always figure it out. Old patterns die hard because at some point they helped us belong, survive, succeed, or stay safe. But real leadership takes courage. Visionary leadership requires a willingness to take risks, speak up, go outside the box, and paint the canvas in a new way with the full box of paints, rather than staying inside the anticipated black and white safety that honestly many rooms quietly prefer. That's why self-trust matters. It becomes the root system that allows you to lead with more clarity, originality, and steadiness. The way I see it, self-trust is made up of 3 core roots: security, intuition, and heart-centered alignment. Let's walk through each one. Security. Security is that part of self-trust that says, I can stay with myself even when something feels uncomfortable. That is such a big piece of leadership. Most leaders don't lose themselves when everything is easy. They lose themselves when the room gets tense, when someone pushes back hard, when disappointment's possible, or when telling the truth might be a disruption. Security is inner steadiness. It's the ability to pause, breathe, and choose from your values instead of letting fear grab the steering wheel. I know I talked last week about Amy Edmondson's work on psychological safety, but it bears repeating because her work has helped bring this concept into the mainstream. The idea that people need to feel safe enough, underscore that. They need to feel safe enough to speak up, take interpersonal risks, contribute, learn, and tell the truth without fear of humiliation or punishment. That matters. And I think there's an inward layer that we don't talk enough about. Do you feel safe inside yourself? Because when you don't, almost every external risk feels bigger than it is. A one-on-one conversation doesn't feel safe. Or a quick, clean decision feels hard and heavy. A boundary can feel like rejection waiting to happen. Visibility can sometimes feel more like exposure than expansion. And that's when we close down. And this is where leaders get tangled. They know what needs to be said, but they bite their tongue. They know a decision needs to be made, but they keep gathering information to avoid discomfort of choosing. I don't know how many rooms that I've been in where I'm like, why is it taking so long to make this decision? I mean, sometimes things that should be simple, I've seen organizations take a year deciding. Blows my mind. They know something is no longer aligned, yet they negotiate with their own truth because rocking the boat feels too risky. And this one I'm actually seeing more and more. Let me know if it lands for you. They only launch a fraction of the project idea because it feels safer, even though the full idea could be legendary. Can you relate to that one? Every time we abandon ourselves to keep something comfortable, guess what? Self-trust takes a hit. And on the flip side, every time you honor what is true for you in a grounded way, your self-trust gets stronger. That doesn't mean becoming harsh, and it doesn't mean we stop caring about impact. It doesn't mean you walk around announcing, well, this is my truth, right? We're not looking to leave emotional wreckage behind us. Security is not emotional recklessness. It's rooted in self-responsibility. So a lot of it is kind of the yes and. Like, yes, I can breathe through this discomfort and still have conversation with care. Yes, I can still speak my truth. It may disappoint someone, but I can actually still be loving and honest. I think the other thing too is most things aren't set in stone. You can make decisions and adjust if needed. Sometimes we add a lot of perfectionism, which just can be really stressful. It can be this yes and. I can listen to feedback without handing over my entire sense of self. I can be misunderstood and stay connected to what is honest. That last one's tender for a lot of conscious leaders. Many of us have spent years trying to be understood, approved of, and seen as good. I have my hand raised. We don't want to be misread. We don't want to be misunderstood. We don't want our motives questioned. We don't want someone to think we're selfish. This is a big one for my caregiving female leaders. Or to be tagged difficult or ungrateful or too much. But if you need universal approval before you make a move, your leadership will always be held hostage. You didn't work so hard for that. Security grows through small acts of self-honoring. Put that on a Post-it note, because that's a leadership nugget that is a great reminder. You keep the promise you made to yourself. You tell the truth sooner. You stop over-explaining. You let your body become part of the conversation. This is the oak tree root system. Values, integrity, regulation, follow through. So I have a question for you. Where are you abandoning yourself to keep something comfortable? And that's not a question to beat yourself up with. I think we do enough of that. We are gently shining a light. Let it show you where you've been leaving your own inner ground to manage someone else's weather. Security is not the absence of pressure, it's the inner evidence that you can stay rooted while pressure moves through. It moves through your body, it moves through the room, it moves through the organization. Be aware of that. The second one is intuition. I've done individual episodes on intuition. It's one of my favorite topics. And I see this as a root of self-trust. And I also want to give intuition more dignity than it often gets in leadership conversations, because intuition is not random. It's not fluff. It is not some woo-woo mystical accessory that we pull out in private or when the real strategy is executed. In my opinion, intuition is intelligence. Often it's your body and brain integrating patterns faster than your conscious mind can explain. This is a power skill, my friend. Antonia Damasio's work around somatic markers points to the very way the emotional and body-based signals support in decision-making. Think about that. So in everyday language, your body may be giving you data before your mind has the full story. I'm sure you have felt a hell yes. And I also am pretty confident that you have had hesitations that deserve some attention. There was like a little bit of, I might need to ask another question before I commit, or I need to slow down, or something feels off here. Or this looks good on paper, but my body is just not having it. Many high-performing leaders are trained to override that level of knowing. Are you one of those? Do you explain it away? Do you tell yourself you're being too sensitive? Do you shut down so you're not difficult? Do you assume your spreadsheet knows more than your lived wisdom? I mean, we've had these experiences. I know that I can say yes, yes, yes. And then that should list comes in, and later you realize, oh, wow, that nudge had been there from the beginning. And that moment of realization is not there to shame us. It's there to teach us. The practice is to study the signal. I love to pattern match. I am a dot connector. I love to see repetition. I love to see overlays. Where is this showing up again? To me, it is like a boom, boom, boom of sacred geometry right there, lighting up in front of us. What did your intuition feel before you overrode it? Where did it show up in your body? What story did you use to talk to yourself out of listening? Were you trying to be liked? Or were you trying to avoid conflict? I know that I tend to go fast too often, so sometimes I'm moving too fast. Or maybe there was a fear of trusting yourself that it would require a choice you didn't feel ready to make. Because that's a big one too, especially now for light workers where there is a knock at your heart's door. Really, I don't want to say begging, but really calling loudly that you are ready to step up into something bigger. So I think oftentimes in that situation where we're overriding our intuition because life is calling us to step up before we feel like we're ready. This is how intuition becomes practical instead of abstract, by listening to all of these things. You become a student of your own inner cues. It's the best kind of laboratory. I mean, at the same time, discernment matters. Every anxious feeling is not intuition. If your nervous system has experienced betrayal, rejection, chronic overfunctioning, or repeated disappointment, uncertainty may register as danger even when there's nothing wrong. Fear tends to be urgent. You can notice it when you contract. I had a session today with a leader and I noticed her body language. And she was sharing some really strong things. And we just had a little pause and looked at how she was shrinking even in her chair. We just took a time to give her space to breathe and to notice and to take up space and to stop shrinking. So intuition has a different quality. It's generally quieter. It may not give you the entire map, but it gives you little beep, beep, beep. It gives you little seeds that help you take the next step. So, part of listening to your intuition is just waiting and being patient, clearly asking for clarity, and then taking that aligned action. It may not happen in the same day. It may bubble up after, and that's fine. So you don't need to blow up your whole life every time you receive an internal nudge. Honoring your intuition can be beautifully simple. You can simply pause before saying yes. You can sleep on a decision, which I always do on the expensive decisions. You get to ask a clarifying question. You can practice noticing your body's response after a meeting. And I think this is a big one. You can give yourself permission to want what you actually want, not the watered down version. That's not impulsive leadership. That's integrated leadership. Data matters, strategy matters, absolutely experience matters. But when you cut yourself off from inner knowing, you lead with only one part of your intelligence. And I know, because you're listening to this, that you want to maximize. You care about amplifying. You don't want to leave value on the table. So why would you cut yourself off from your inner knowing and only use part of your intelligence? So, a helpful question here is the fear trying to protect an old pattern, or is this wisdom guiding a present choice? That can probably be a nice little journaling prompt. There's no need to rush. The body often speaks in sensation before language. So, for example, if you think of even that sentence is fear trying to protect an old pattern, what happens when you even think about that? I mean, immediately I get a little tightness in my chest, maybe a subtle constriction in my throat. My mind starts to replay all the fears that I've had today or old fears. Language is powerful. And conversely, on the flip side, when I think of, is wisdom guiding a present choice? I let that land for a minute. I expand naturally. I sit up a little differently. I think about choice. Choice excites me, even that word. I get very empowered by the word choice, endless opportunities, infinite possibilities. My mind can riff on that. There is an expansion. There's a safety. Notice your body sensations. Notice that the heart may know before the mind is ready to explain. The deeper self rarely screams. It doesn't need to compete with fear to be valid. What a concept. What a concept. Okay, the third root of self-trust is heart-centered alignment. You know that this is my favorite piece of my work. This is where security and intuition move into aligned action. Heart-centered alignment asks, does this choice match who I'm becoming, or am I maintaining who I've been expected to be? That question can clear a lot of fog, because sometimes we call it confusion when it's actually conflict. Confusion says, I don't know. Conflict says, I do know, but honoring it may change something. That's where leadership gets very real. Can you remember a time when this popped up for you? To me, this calls for radical honesty, which is not usually easy. Heart-centered alignment is not weak leadership. It is not people-pleasing. It's not endless availability, emotional absorption, or saying yes because you're a caring person. True heart-centered alignment is honest and congruent. And I want to pause here to look at the definition of congruency. A congruent person is someone whose feelings, thoughts, and values align with their external actions or words, and that represents a state of authenticity and consistency. Did that have something click a little bit different for you? It did for me when I read it, because reflecting on definitions often sets me back on the right path and not some connotation that I've kind of made up through the years. This alignment allows you to be kind without being porous, clear without cold, brave without becoming reckless, and loving without self-abandoning. This is where the heart-brain coherence has been so valuable in my own life and work. When we regulate the nervous system and bring the heart and brain into more coherent rhythms, we access a different inner state. This is scientifically backed. Leaders do not just need better ideas. They need a state, an actual state like a wellspring, where better ideas can actually flow through. When you're dysregulated, your world narrows. Think about that for a minute. Everything becomes smaller, a little bit grayer, darker, more shadowed. A delayed email feels personal. Someone not catching your wave feels personal. A direct comment feels like an attack. Someone shutting the door in your face feels personal. It feels like a microaggression. A boundary feels dangerous. But when you are more regulated, you have a bigger range. You can listen with more capacity. You see options that weren't visible from a previously threatened state. You get to respond without handing the steering wheel to the most activated part of you. Heart-centered alignment brings your values, your body, your wisdom, and your next right action all online. All right back online, like boop, you've just reset your modem. That does not mean aligned decisions always feel peaceful. Sometimes alignment feels uncomfortable because you're no longer contorting. It may feel like grief because an old identity is loosening its grip. That's scary. I personally pray every day for surrender, and let me tell you, it's not easy. It may look like a boundary your former self would have explained away. It may require disappointing someone. This is especially important for conscious leaders and helpers, healers, coaches, all my mission-driven entrepreneurs, because service can become a very elegant hiding place. We can fall into overgiving and call it generosity. We can avoid the hard conversation and call it compassion, or undercharge and call it accessibility. We can ignore our personal limits and call it devotion, or stay outdated in a paradigm that no longer serves us, or office dynamics that can even be toxic, and call it loyalty. But true alignment does not ask you to abandon yourself to prove your goodness. True alignment allows service to come from wholeness instead of depletion, and that distinction matters. Because the goal is not to stop caring. The goal is to care from a place that includes you too. It's putting yourself back into the equation. A simple practice for heart-centered alignment is to place your hand over your heart and take a few slow breaths. You can do this with me now. And tune in, asking yourself, what is the most honest next right action that you can take from love, integrity, and self-respect? And then just listen. Because that simple question can powerfully cut through the noise. And just the fact of putting your hand over heart can bring you back to your body. It softens the grip of urgency. It reminds you that leadership is not only about what you produce or solve or carry. It's about who you are while you're doing it. I always like to think about it like, who am I when no one's looking? I think that was a song lyric. And I think about that, like even with the littlest things, like putting the grocery cart back where it belongs, even though no one's looking. Doing those simple little things, picking up a piece of trash on your walk and putting it in the receptacle, even when no one's looking. Simple things. Heart-centered alignment is not about being agreeable. It's about becoming so congruent that your leadership stops leaking energy through self-betrayal. When we talk about self-trust, we're talking about the root system of leadership. Security helps you stay with yourself. Intuition helps you hear yourself. And heart-centered alignment helps you act in a way that honors yourself. This is how you become a stable oak tree. You don't control the weather. You don't control every reaction, opinion, market shift, family pattern, client expectation, or social media trend. But you can deepen your roots. You can regulate before responding, pausing before overriding that internal nudge we talked about. You can trust your quiet yeses. And the deeper the roots, the less you need the world around you to be perfectly calm in order to lead with steadiness, clarity, and courage. This is a big one. If you're starting to be like, yeah, but you don't understand, or if you only knew, or I've tried, but it hasn't worked, I just want to say with so much love, you are drifting into victim consciousness. Come back to what's in your control. Be open to deepening your roots. This is the work. Not becoming untouchable, becoming returnable. Able to come back to your breath, your body, your values, your inner knowing, and your next honest move. That is self-trust. And it's built one choice at a time. For this week, I invite you to look at one area of your life or leadership where you already know you've been overriding yourself. And then ask your system. And let your system know that you're listening to that next right move, because the more you listen, the more trustworthy you become to yourself. And that is where real leadership begins. I hope you enjoyed this episode and got a little value from it. And if you did, you can share it with one of your biz besties or leave a review at lovethepodcast.com/brilliance. I read and respond to every single one of them. I create these episodes for you, so if there's ever a topic that you just want me to riff on or give some thoughts on it, please just send it my way. I'm more than happy to create a personal episode just for you. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, breathe joy.